Hi everyone, this is the sixth lecture of week 6, and again you can listen to this as an audio if you prefer. And again, it is best if you read Genesis 39 through Genesis 42 before you listen to this lecture. I am going to go over the Joseph story quite quickly, so it is probably more important that you have some semblance of idea of what the biblical text says. So it's maybe more imperative that you actually read the text for these stories, okay? When we get to Genesis 39, okay, it continues with the Joseph story as if the preceding chapter, Genesis 38, the story, that weird story about Judah and Tamar that I spoke about in the last video, as if that was not originally there. And indeed, it probably was not originally there. Okay, because as I said in the preceding video, Genesis 38 seems to interrupt and intrude upon the Joseph story that kind of sequentially unfolds. Okay, and this is how Genesis 39, now the continuation of the Joseph story, this is how it begins. So this is Genesis 39, verse 1 and the following. Now Joseph was taken down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard, an Egyptian, brought him from the Ishmaelites who had brought him down there. And the Lord was with Joseph, and he became a successful man. He was in the house of his Egyptian master. And his master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord caused all that he did to prosper in his hands. So Joseph found favor in his sight and attended him. He made him overseer of his house and put him in charge of all that he had. And from the time that he made overseer in his house and over all that he had, the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. The blessing of the Lord was on all that he had in house and field. So he left all that he had in Joseph's charge, and with him there, he had no concern for anything but the food that he ate. Now Joseph was handsome and good looking. Okay. We are told that Joseph is sold to an Egyptian officer named Potiphar. Okay, and as with the other patriarchs, as you've seen, the Lord allows them to prosper. Okay, and indeed allows the prosperity of those connected to these chosen patriarchs. Okay, Joseph, like Jacob, is a source of blessing for the entire household. Okay, we are also told at the very end, this tiny description of Joseph, right, that Joseph was handsome and maybe well built. Okay, handsome and good looking is how it's translated. Okay, now in the Bible, being handsome or being good looking is a dubious honor. Okay. There is a tendency for bad things to happen to you if you are good looking. Okay, so remember Rachel. Okay, also later Saul would be described as good looking, and bad things will happen to Saul. And also one of David's sons, Absalom, will be described as good looking, and not, Absalom won't have a very good end either. Okay, so this is maybe a hint that things are about to go awry. Okay, the fact that Joseph is good looking thus indeed sets the stage for the problem with Potiphar's wife, okay, who, noticing him, seems to have taken a shine to her handsome servant. Okay, and here again you see the stereotype of Egyptians as kind of oversexed. Okay, and this is what it says in verses 6 of Genesis 39 and following. Okay, now Joseph was handsome and good looking. And after a time, his master's wife cast her eye on Joseph and said, "Lie with me." But he refused. One day, however, and this is verse 11, I skipped a couple of verses. One day, however, when he went into the house to do his work, and while no one else was in the house, she caught hold of his garment, saying, "Lie with me." But he left his garment in her hand and fled and ran outside. And when she saw that he had left his garment in her hand and had fled us outside, she called out to the members of her household and said to them, "See, my husband has brought among us a Hebrew to insult us. He came in to lie with me, but I cried out with a loud voice. And when he heard me raise my voice and cry out, he left his garment beside me and fled outside." Then she kept his garment by her until the master came home. And she told him the same story, saying, "The Hebrew servant whom you brought among us came in to me to insult me. But as soon as I raised my voice and cried out, he left his garment beside me and fled outside." And when his master heard the words that his wife spoke to him, saying, "This is the way your servant treated me," he became enraged. And Joseph's master took him and put him into prison. Okay. As this story is usually interpreted, okay, there is no one else inside the house. Potiphar's wife tries to sleep with Joseph, grabs his garment, And when he flees, she lies and says that Joseph tried to rape her, and Joseph is once again jailed. Okay, and this story has attracted a whole lot of attention, especially in post-biblical texts, right? So this group of texts by post-biblical authors that attempted to interpret the biblical text. Okay, something like fan fiction. It's very similar to that. Okay, so in post-biblical texts, what they do is they're very interested in the story. Okay, and they increasingly exaggerate, Joseph's attractiveness as well as the lengths that Potiphar's wife go to try to sleep with him. You can see why they focus on that. Okay, and the story was also used by Christians and rabbinic readers to point out Joseph, to really portray Joseph as a model of virtue. Okay, how to behave, how a young good man would behave. Okay, indeed, some interpreters have argued that this episode fits this kind of wisdom model, or this model that comes out of wisdom literature or sapiential literature. Okay, and in this literature, what the writers describe is this kind of warning to young men. Right, these literatures are centered on how to make a young man wise. Okay, but it famously warns these young men who want to be wise to stay far, far away from foreign seductresses who will lead them astray. Okay, and these foreign seductresses, like Potiphar's wife here, would be kind of seen as the epitome, the symbol of a lack of wisdom. Okay, other interpreters, however, take a slightly different interpretation. Okay, and they argue that maybe Joseph is a bit more complicit or guilty than the text maybe lets on initially. Okay, and they say, in such a large household, isn't it really odd that Joseph would be left completely alone, especially with a woman who has been trying to tempt him to sleep with her? And moreover, they argue the way that he runs off is very strange. Right? What kind of garment is he wearing that Potiphar's wife can simply grab it and take the whole thing off? Is he just in a skimpy robe? And is that how servants were normally dressed? Right? How much clothes does he have on? Right? Hence, taking that view, some argue that Joseph was actually a lot more tempted, a lot more in a state of willing undress than the story originally lets on in the initial reading. Okay. There's other oddities here that I should point out. Potiphar's occupation is usually translated as an officer or a general sometimes. The word here is actually eunuch. Okay, and this may explain why his wife is depicted as so eager to get Joseph to sleep with her. Okay. Adding to the weirdness, if you go on, we are told later in Genesis chapter 41, verse 50, that Joseph subsequently does marry when he kind of, rises back up in power. And who he marries is very odd. We're told in that verse that Joseph marries Asenat, a daughter of Potiphar, the priest of On. Okay, and notice how similar Potiphar. This is the name Potiphar. Okay, as if, and it's not necessarily a common name, or certainly names that are repeated or the same in the biblical text is something of note, okay, because it's probably deliberate, okay, and so we don't know why the daughter that he marries of this person is named so similarly to Potiphar here. Perhaps there were more traditions, additional traditions about Joseph and someone kind of named Potiphar that were lost in the transmission. Okay. Notice also that we are told that that the daughter of Potiphar is a priest. Again, kind of linking up Joseph to magic and magical abilities. Okay. Now, whether guilty or not, or whether Joseph was, had a part to play in what unfolded with Potiphar's wife, whoever this may be, by Genesis 41, we find Joseph now stuck in jail. And some do wonder whether, if you really thought your servant tried to rape your wife, you would have had him killed. So maybe there's some hints here that Potiphar kind of doubted, okay, his wife's word, whatever. Okay, so he's back in jail. Okay. Notice how Joseph, what you'll find in the Joseph narrative is a series of up and downs, up and downs. Okay. And again, in part, this has to do with the fact that the Joseph story is a wisdom tale. Okay. About how a young boy or a young man child, okay, a preteen, I don't know, whatever. Okay. Having gone through the ups and downs, right, the vicissitudes of life, comes to become a mature and wise man. Okay, and so you see that kind of theme, maybe as a way to explain why there's such up and down pattern to Joseph's story here. Okay, so Joseph's in jail. And again, Joseph, though in jail, manifests his talent in the interpretation of dreams, his magical abilities to interpret dreams, okay? And he manifests this talent by interpreting two dreams, lots of twos in the Joseph story as well, okay? He first interprets the dream of the chief cupbearer as foretelling the cupbearer's reinstatement. Notice he's in there with two jailmates, okay? So he interprets the first dream as saying, don't fear, you're going to be reinstated, okay? Next, he interprets the dreams of the chief baker, okay? Who, after hearing Joseph give a favorable account of the first dream, the dream of the cupbearer, now wants his dream interpreted too, right? He's probably thinking, oh, this guy will just give favorable interpretation of dreams. Let me tell him my dream too, okay? However, Joseph, in this particular instance, gives the chief baker an unfavorable interpretation, right? Namely that he will be executed, okay? And of course, we are told that both interpretations end up coming true, okay? Notice the subtle changes in Joseph as the narrative goes along. Okay, remember that very early in the story of Joseph, when he interpreted dreams, right, or when he himself had those set of double dreams, he sort of, immaturely, told everyone about them, right? And this is kind of what led to him being sold by his brothers when he said, "I had these two dreams where you were basically bowing down to me." Okay, notice how here Joseph is now more reticent, right? And now how he uses his abilities, his dream interpretive abilities, to get out of jail and to become increasingly successful, okay? And he does this by telling the cupbearer, the one who he knows will be reinstated, to remember him when he gets out, okay? And so notice that Joseph is becoming more skilled in using his talent to benefit him, okay? Or another way to put it is that he is growing in wisdom, okay? So he tells the cupbearer, remember me and what I did for you when you're out and when you're successful again, okay? And we are told in Genesis 41 that after 2 years, okay, that all of a sudden the cupbearer remembers Joseph. Okay, and the reason why the cupbearer remembers Joseph is that Pharaoh all of a sudden has two dreams that no magician or interpreter can now interpret. Okay, and at this point, when Pharaoh says, "I have these two dreams, can anyone interpret them for me?" Right, the baker finally remembers Joseph and says something along the lines of, "Yeah, actually, I when I was in jail, I had this cellmate, and he was a very good dream interpreter." Okay, and as a result of this remembering, okay, Joseph is brought before Pharaoh and interprets the Pharaoh's double dreams to mean that after 7 years of good harvest of plenty, okay, there will be 7 years of famine, okay, and the double dreams mean that this is assured. Okay, this will surely come to pass. Again, notice in the Joseph narrative, a very different vision of God as a God who has set plans, okay, that will surely come to pass, right? Unlike in the earlier parts of Genesis, where the feeling that you get, especially in the primeval history, Genesis 1 through 11, is of a God that is almost making it up, going at it as it comes, okay? Even with the Abraham narrative, where Abraham bargains with God, there's a hint that God's plan is not set in stone. By the Joseph narrative, you get a much stronger sense that this divine plan is indeed kind of set in stone. This is a God that is maybe omniscient, okay, or certainly more omniscient as to plan, as to see the future, okay? So So now, not only is Joseph now using his dreams to become more successful, showing his growth in wisdom, okay, but we are told that after he successfully interprets Pharaoh's dreams, he also gives Pharaoh advice on how to prepare for the future, okay, i.e., how to prepare for the famine. Okay, so notice again the slight change in Joseph. He no longer just interprets now, right? He now uses his ability to interpret, to discern and prepare, right? And indeed, to grow in wisdom, okay? And as a result of all this, of course, we are told that Joseph becomes very powerful, becoming only second to Pharaoh, a vizier, okay? Um, Now, so we're told that at this point, Joseph is doing like super well, okay? And here's where you get some kind of interesting insight into the differences between the southern writer and the northern writer of the Joseph stories, okay? And it's that how efficiently or how well the northern writer sort of clues you into the emotionality, the emotions that Joseph has, okay? And this is not as evident in the southern writings, okay? So, for example, in Genesis 41, verses 50 to 52, we are told that Joseph has now married an Egyptian, has had two sons. Okay, and notice here how the biblical writer is not disturbed at all by the fact that Joseph's wife is a foreigner, an Egyptian. Like I said, the biblical writer goes back and forth about whether they are disturbed by exogamous marriages outside of one's group. Okay, um, now, in the emotionality of Joseph is evident in the two names in verses 50 and 52 that he gives to his sons. And again, like all names in the Bible, they are false etymology. They're kind of made up explanations, okay? So we're told that he named the first son Manasseh. And why? Because God has made me forget all my hardships and all of my father's house. And we're told he has a second son. Notice the two sons, the doubles again. He names the second son Ephraim. Why? For God has made me fruitful in the land of my misfortune. Okay, and notice what those two kind of etymologies or explanations of the names reveal. Okay, especially about Joseph's kind of psychology and emotions, right? It's clear by the names that he is trying really hard to forget his past, and in particular his family. Okay, and in that, notice the kind of pain that comes through. Okay, this may in part explain why Joseph never tried to get in contact with his father again, something that interpreters have wondered about. Okay, maybe Joseph can't bear to face it, or maybe he's just trying to forget his what happened because it was so traumatic. Okay, or maybe he thinks his father has forgotten him, or maybe even worse, maybe you know uh, uh, maybe Joseph thinks that his father was part of the plot to get rid of him. Right? Notice it is Jacob, his father, who sends Joseph to check up on his brothers, which leads to him getting sold. Okay, so the northern writer doesn't spell out everything. What the northern writer does do, however, is to add an interesting layer of emotions to everything. Okay, so stylistically there is a difference. Okay, for whatever reason, Joseph, we are told through in verses 50 and through 52, wants to put his past behind it. Okay, but unfortunately for Joseph, the biblical text is centered on a story about a particular family, and God and the narrator therefore will not let him off the hook very easily. Okay, and as soon as Joseph says, "Oh, I want to forget my family," he is of course reunited with them. Okay. In Genesis 42, we are told that, like their ancestors before them, in particular Abraham and Isaac, okay, the rest of Joseph's brothers who are in Canaan are once again being affected by a terrible famine, the famine that Joseph predicted. Okay, so this is Genesis 42, verse 1 and following. When Jacob learned that there was grain in Egypt, he said to his sons, "Why do you keep looking at one another?" Okay, notice how well the family's getting along. Okay, "I have heard," he said, "that there is grain in Egypt. Go down and buy grain for us there, that we may live and not die." So 10 of Joseph's brothers went down to buy grain in Egypt. But Jacob did not send Joseph's brother Benjamin with his brothers, for he feared that harm might come to him. Thus the sons of Israel were among the other people who came to buy grain, for the famine had reached the land of Canaan. Okay. Um, Notice again the emotional, the kind of hint of pain, okay, in the mention about how all the brothers but Benjamin, okay, the remaining son of Rachel, were sent to get grain. Okay, we are told that, and I'm sorry, I have to move through this very quickly, right? It's a very beautiful tale. Again, I would highly, emphasize that you read the story of Joseph, okay? When the brothers, we are told, reach Egypt, they are confronted with Joseph, whom they do not recognize, okay? And they bow down to him, right? And at this point, when his family is bowing down to him, it states in Genesis 42, verse 9, that Joseph remembered his earlier dream, right? Notice how it comes true. The earlier dream with his whole family bowing down to him, or the sheaves bowing down to him. Okay. Um, and again, notice the difference in how Joseph behaved then when he blurted out the dreams, and how Joseph behaves now when his brother, unknown to them, okay, appears before Joseph, okay, when Joseph is in a position of power. And notice the kind of growth in wisdom. Okay, Joseph here, when confronted by his brothers, right? Instead of blurting out, I'm Joseph, screw you guys, or saying, making rash decisions, right, which would be understandable here, seems to begin to enact a rather complicated plan to get the brothers to reveal their true selves. Okay, and he does this, and it takes up several chapters, right? Joseph does this, or enacts this plan first by accusing the brothers of being spies and throwing them in jail. Okay, and notice that when the brothers are accused of being spies, notice what they say when they are trying to declare their innocence, and this is found in chapter 42, Genesis 42, verse 10, the following. And they said to him, "No, my lord, your servants have come to buy food. We are the sons of one man. We are honest men. Your servants have never been spies." But he said to them, "No, you have come to see the nakedness of the land." And they said, "We, your servants, are 12 brothers, the sons of a certain man in the land of Egypt. The youngest, however, is now with our father, and one is no more." Okay, notice how much they blurt out. I mean, if these are spies, it's like the worst spies. Okay, but there's other also interesting things to note. Notice how the brothers kind of function as one unit now. Okay, and this is a good positive hint, right? Maybe indicating that once they realize how much it hurt their father to lose Joseph, they have come to a sort of a better understanding of the importance of family. Okay, and therefore they're able to act as a unit. Okay. Notice also this kind of declaration they keep making about how they're honest, but then they get fumbled up. They're like, no, 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 we're honest. But they say, "Oh, yeah, we're honest, except," and then they mention this brother who is remaining with their father, and one brother that is no more. And this is a weird thing to mention. Like, nobody asked them about, is everyone there or anything, right? So they're just kind of freely offering this information as if they are guilted by it, right? That as they're saying they're innocent and that they're honest, they remember how they were not honest, how they lied to their father about their brother being dead, and selling him to slave traders, okay? And all of a sudden they get kind of tripped up, okay? Now, and notice all the information given to Joseph, who is now wise, right? He knows that his father is alive. He knows that his brother Benjamin is alive, that the sons of Jacob did not do something terrible to Benjamin too, right? And notice that Joseph now knows, okay, or he has very strong hints by the kind of outbursts of his brothers, that Benjamin is now in Canaan with his father because his father is afraid to let him go. And therefore, it may be here that Joseph recognizes that his father was not involved, okay? And indeed probably believes that Joseph is dead, okay? So notice how much information is conveyed, okay? Despite this kind of declaration of their honesty, Joseph still throws his brothers in jail. And while the brothers are in jail, they have a very tense family argument, understandable, okay? And in this family argument, we are given a further glimpse into the ways in which they are burdened by the guilt over their earlier mistreatment of their little brother. Okay, and this is in verse 21 and following. "And they said to one another, 'Alas, we are paying the penalty for what we did to our brother. We saw his anguish when he pleaded with us, but we did not listen. That is why this anguish has come upon us.'" And it's correct. That is indeed why this anguish has come upon them, right? Then Reuben answered them, did I not tell you not to wrong the boy? But you would not listen to me. So now here comes a reckoning for his blood. They did not know that Joseph understood them, since he spoke with them through an interpreter. And he turned away from them and wept. Then he returned and spoke to them again, and he picked out Simeon and had him bound before their eyes. Okay, again, notice the difference in styles. Okay, Joseph kind of will keep turning aside to weep. Okay, so we are told that Joseph, overhearing them, okay, will tell them that they can all leave except for one brother, Simeon, who he will hold as collateral. Okay, collateral for what? Well, the brothers can go, but again, Joseph has a plan. Okay, and the next time they come back, we are told that Joseph has commanded that they bring their youngest brother Benjamin with them. Okay, and at this point in the narrative, the reader is not clear what Joseph is up to. Okay, but certainly that he has some long game that he is playing. Okay, to see what happens next, turn to the next video.